What's up, Clemson baseball fans? This is another episode of Around the Bases. I'm your host, Big Al, and joining me tonight, we have a special guest. I have made the call to the bullpen, and this guy has elite stuff. Believe you me, it is Jason Priester. Jason, how are you, my friend?
I'm all right, Alan. How about yourself, man?
I am doing good. Not as good as I could have been. Okay, it could have been a really good weekend for the Tigers. End up being just a so-so weekend, but that's all right. We're gonna talk about what all happened this past week. Again, as always, we're gonna go through our Chutes and Ladders segment, give our negatives, our positives that we saw this past week against South Carolina, against Florida State. And then we're gonna give a quick recap of the Duke game, the Duke series coming up. It's the last series of the year. It's at home for Clemson, so it should be a good one. I hope so anyways. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that everybody likes and follows. If they're on Facebook, I want them to like and subscribe. If they're on YouTube, again, it's how we expand the brand. It's how we get the conversation started. The more people, the better, for sure. All right, so let's get right down to it, Jason. So this past week, started off great, I came here on the show on Monday. I gave him a tongue lashing, as I have been doing some this year, and it was well deserved. It was a rough weekend before, and it turned the tide for him last time. Last time I did that, they swept Wake Forest, they swept Louisville, and it was a very good thing. And so I was hoping that was going to kind of work again, and it just didn't quite work out that way. But it started well. They beat South Carolina 7-2, huge win in the rivalry series to salvage one of those games that was postponed earlier from the season. Then they go into Florida State. Got a little sloppy in the first game, came back strong in the second game, got a little sloppy towards the end of the third game. So ended up losing, dropping 2 out of 3 to Florida State. That was a big ACC series. But you know what? Not a bad week, I don't think. What were your thoughts from the week?
Yeah, mine are kind of similar to yours. I had high hopes going into the weekend, despite the fact this team has not played very well on the road this season. I don't know what it is. It's a Heckle and Jekyll thing. They just do not play well on the road.
Yeah.
And they did, after playing so well Tuesday night against South Carolina. I mean, that was just a phenomenal baseball game from almost start to finish. It was a clean baseball game. They just played well. And, I mean, they dominated that game pretty much. And then it was so different when they got on the road Friday night in Tallahassee. You see Mac Anglin, who's normally doesn't walk a ton of guys. He doesn't have his command walking some guys. And that was the common theme all weekend. Guys that don't typically issue a lot of walks were issuing free passes. And it came back to bite them big time, especially on Sunday.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I actually have a note about that here later on. So we'll I tell you what, let's go ahead, since that's in my notes for Chutes and Ladders, let's go ahead and jump right into the Chutes and Ladders segment. Okay, so we've got the shoots or the negatives, and that's what we're going to start out with. So tell me yours first. I'll give you mine after you give me yours. What's the negative stuff you saw from the weekend? Let's go ahead and hash that out right now.
Number one, the free passes. Like I said, Anglin's a guy that doesn't walk. I can't remember how many walks he had Friday night, but it was more than he typically has. Even Keyshawn Askew walked a few more guys than he normally does. But then on Sunday, Nick Clayton, I think he came in to that start issuing 2 walks all season, and I don't remember how many he had off the top of my head, but he had several. And then same thing with Nick Hoffman. He walked, I think 4 guys, had 2 coming in all season. Free passes was a big thing. Sloppy defense was another one. And at critical junctions in the ball game too. I mean, at some of the biggest moments in the ball game, we saw some errors and some unearned runs, and that's just things you cannot do, especially coming down the stretch when you're playing for a spot in the postseason. And this team has made a habit of doing those kind of things, especially on the road.
Yeah, without a doubt. And as a matter of fact, the errors a couple of times were coming from the guys that aren't supposed to make those errors. James Parker had a rough inning for sure, a rough game, and that cost Clemson big time. I like that you mentioned the walks. The walks was one of the things I have tabbed on my list as well. So I wrote down the walks, and for FSU pitching, in game 1, they walked 2 batters. In game 2, they walked 4, and in game 3, they walked 2. Clemson, they walked 8, they walked 4, and they walked 9. The free passes, they will kill you every single time, and Clemson absolutely did not do a good job of that this weekend. The strikeouts were a problem yet again. It's been a common theme all season. Clemson is striking out way too much. They had 33 strikeouts on the weekend. That's just too many. Plain and simple. Bullpen that did not do what we were hoping our bullpen was going to do, at least at the beginning of the year. They've had some struggles at times this year, and that's fine. If you're going to have some ups and downs, they've just been a little more inconsistent than I thought they were going to be. And they had some struggles. Jeffrey Gilbert came in, and obviously he struggled there. You could say Hoffman struggled if you want to, but we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in a second. I thought Hoffman actually pitched pretty well. So I thought Hoffman pitched pretty well. I wanted him to have the start. If you've watched this show, you know that Hoffman is my Sunday guy. Okay, I think he has proven that. I think you like Hoffman too. Okay, great. So we're on the same page. That's good for me to know because I think when he came in to start in the middle of the season and he became your Sunday guy, he has been completely dominant in every start. And then all of a sudden, Matt Clark gets a start. Then Nick Clayton gets a start. And I'm thinking, I understand Hoffman has a new role, so to speak. They like to put him in this different role, in this closer type, in relief type role, and that's fine. But your starters are where it's at, and he can give you innings if you let him, which I like. And he just did nothing to lose that job, which bothers me. That's why I thought he should have had that start from the beginning, and he didn't. But, he came in a tough situation, and my last negative actually was the umpire. What a disastrous strike zone this guy had in Game 3. It was all over the place. I couldn't decide what was a strike and what wasn't, and it cost Clemson big time when Hoffman came in with the bases loaded and walked those 2 runs in. The first batter had no business being walked in. I thought that guy was struck out at least twice. so that was kind of rough, and, of course, he walked in another one after that.
I did enjoy seeing Monty Lee get fired up, and getting behind. I'm not for certain, but I think that's the first time I can recall him being ejected since he's been at Clemson, and he was hot, man, and rightfully so because, like you said, Hoffman had that guy struck out twice, and he ended up walking in a run, and it was a huge momentum shift in the ball game at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah,
but
no
I'm like you. I don't know. I question why Clayton got to start on Sunday to begin with. Hoffman's done it. He's been there. He's had 3, 4, maybe even 5. I don't remember how many, 3 or 4 or 5 starts this season.
Yeah.
And he's looked good in almost every one of them. Heck, he's got the only complete game of the season. But you decide to start Nick Clayton, who's never started a game before in his career. And he's been so good on the back end, even no matter where you've used him, if you use him in the middle relief or setup or even as the closer. He's been so good there. And that's a decision that I didn't understand. I still don't understand. I'm like you. I wanted to see Hoffman get to start Sunday, especially knowing that Matt Clark was not available.
Yeah, so it's funny. If you've watched the show all year, it's been a lot of me criticizing some decisions made by Monty Lee. It's something I've done a lot of. We simply differ with our baseball philosophies. Okay, we have different points of view, different in-game decisions. It's what we do, and I said before, you can win both ways, and that's okay. It's just that it seems like his decisions aren't working out for the most part, and it's kind of frustrating. I like it when there's a tough decision where you can have an argument for either side. What bothers me is when I'm sitting here, and I know a lot of baseball, and I'm sitting here thinking, I can't come up with a good baseball reason that this is being done. And that's happened a few times this year. That's why it's been a little frustrating, especially, compounded with the fact that Clemson hasn't had the season that we all hoped they would have, for sure. So, look, let's go ahead and get into the positive stuff. We got to talk about the good stuff. They did go 2-2. It was great competition. So, what do you see that was good from this past weekend?
Clemson struggled to hit the ball with runners on base and runners in scoring position all season long. I don't know what the numbers were total for the weekend, but I thought they did that pretty well Sunday. I think they hit 500 with runners in scoring position Sunday. They hit well with runners on base. That was one thing I thought they did a good job of this weekend compared to some weekends past. And a big positive to me was Hoffman. I know he ended up issuing a couple walks late. He came in a tough situation, and despite issuing the 2 walks to the first 2 batters, he really settled down and over the next, 4 1/3, and really shut the Florida State hitters down. I thought he looked like he might have been running out of gas there at the end, but he was one of the big positives for me. I thought Askew was a positive Saturday despite the grand slam. It was one pitch. The guy hit it over the fence. It's baseball, that happens. I didn't even think it was a terrible pitch. It wasn't like he left it way up in the zone or anything. The guy just hit the ball hard and it went over the fence. But you mentioned the bullpen earlier, you know, and it's been so good this season for the most part. Clemson was 21-0 when leading after 7 innings before Sunday. And so you had to feel good about that thing going into the 8th inning. And I know we're talking about positives, and I'm getting back into a negative again. But
no, that's all right.
That was just one of the more disappointing things. I should have mentioned Gilbert. Gilbert is one of my negatives too, because he just doesn't look like the same guy he did the first half of the season right now. I don't know if he's lost confidence or if he's getting tired or what. I know he's pitched his innings is getting on up there compared to some of the starters, but yeah, I just the back end of the bullpen was disappointing Sunday. Not Hoffman, but Gilbert.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Look, I mean, the things that I have written down is that they're 2-2 versus good competition. You know, and that's something that's a positive thing. I mean, FSU is a really good team. South Carolina's a really good team. Both of them are going to be in the regionals, so I think that's a good deal. James Parker broke out of his little mini slump that he'd been having. You know, I actually talked about him on the show last week, and he had been struggling at the plate, and he had a good weekend, so that was good to see. Briar Hawkins had a really good weekend. He went 6 for 15 with a walk. Okay, he's hitting 400 on the weekend. That's something that we have really needed from Briar Hawkins. A lot of people want to give him a little grief because he may not be the best defensively, but I think he's the guy that you have to have in there, whether it be at third base, whether it be at first. I think you have to have him in here or in there for his at bat, and he's been doing better than all the other options there for sure. So I like having Hawkins in the lineup. Sharp came in, looked a lot better on the mound. That was great to see. You know, he's obviously was our guy. He was our Friday night guy, and he hasn't been able to pitch, and he finally gets back in there, finally started to look more comfortable. So I think that's a real positive moving forward. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't doubt it if he's your Sunday guy, so to speak, this week. You know, we'll find out here this weekend.
He has looked fantastic in his, you know, 2 appearances of late. He came in and shut South Carolina down in the midweek, and he did the same thing Saturday against Florida State. I mean, he looked he looked like early season form, and he looked stretched out. So that's a good thing to have coming down the stretch.
Yeah, no doubt. And as a matter of fact, and you mentioned this earlier, is I like to give him grief on this show, as we've talked about, but I got to give a major shout out to Monty Lee because I absolutely loved the fact that he got tossed from that game. He had to get thrown out right there. The umpire was, in the famous words of Ron Cherry, giving us the business. Okay, it was not good. It was frustrating to see. I know Hoffman was frustrated, and he was out there backing up his players, which is what you have to have. And you know he's got to be hot because, like you said, he doesn't get thrown out often. He's a lot like Brad Brownell in that respect. They don't get thrown out often. So when they do, they probably deserve it, and they deserve to be thrown out. And that was a good thing. I really enjoyed seeing that fire from him. Unfortunately, it didn't work out enough to get Clemson the victory. But you know what? I think that's got to happen. I was very glad to see that for sure. So we got a lot to look forward to this weekend against Duke. It's it's a tough series. It's a big series. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and jump in right there to this series. So what we have, Duke's 24-20. They're 13-17 in conference. Okay, so they're probably in the bottom of the ACC. They are 7-13 on the road. Okay, so they're not a good road team. They play similarly to Clemson. It seems like they don't do very well on the road. They did, however, sweep Virginia Tech this past weekend. Now, it was a home series, but they did sweep Virginia Tech. And something I noticed, I was looking at their pitcher. So their pitcher on Friday night, at least this is how it was this past weekend, is Jack Carey. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's a junior who seems to be kind of heating up all of a sudden these last couple games. So he's gone 7 innings in both of his last 2 outings. And it's funny because this is a theme amongst all 3 of their starters. Pitcher number 2 is Cooper Stinson. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's a junior as well. He's gone 6 innings in his past 2 games. He seems to be kind of a contact pitcher, though, not a lot of strikeouts. So I'm hoping that bodes well for Clemson. Maybe we can make some contact and get some balls out of the yard or something like that. Pitcher number 3, Luke Fox. He has the best ERA of all of them. Those guys have almost 5.5 to 6 ERAs. The first 2, this guy has like a 2.5. He's left-handed pitcher, freshman. But he's heating up as well. He struck out by far his most hitters in his last 2 at-bats. Or his last 2 outings, I should say. So the last 2 outings for all of these Duke pitchers have been like their best of the year. Not necessarily earn run wise, but as far as how deep they've gone into the game, okay, which saves your bullpen, obviously, and we know how huge that is because Clemson has had a depleted bullpen several times this year. But, and again, this guy on Sunday has struck out a ton of guys. So it's going to be an interesting series. It's one that you expect Clemson to win. Again, we've talked about this on the show before, Clemson seems to do this. Every single season, they seem to come down to the last week and need a miracle, okay? And they seem to pull it out almost all the time and sneak into the tournament, okay? So I guess now the question becomes, Jason, do we need to win 2? Do we need to win all 3? And let's just assume, we're going to assume hypothetically they're going to win 1 game in the tournament, okay? They're going to win 1 game in the ACC tournament. Can we sneak in the NCAA tournament with 2 wins, or do we need a sweep?
Typically for an ACC team to get in the tournament, you've got to be in the top 50 of the RPI. Got to be. Clemson sits right now at 49.
Right.
So I think they absolutely have to win 2, no doubt about it. They might have to win 3. Duke's a little bit higher at 43. I think a sweep would be much better, no doubt about it. I mean, of course, that's obvious, but I think if we're assuming they win 1 in the ACC tournament, they might could sneak in winning 2 out of 3 against Duke. I mean, don't hold me to that, but I think that might be the case. And with the COVID schedules this year and strictly playing conference schedules, the NCAA might be a little more lenient on that top 50 thing than they have been in years past, or so I'm told. That's a possibility. So that's another thing going in their favor if that's the way it plays out. But they have no doubt got to win 2. If they drop this series, they're done. No question about it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I mean, obviously, if they drop the series and then they go on a big run in the ACC tournament, I guess things can change. But we're not going to assume that right now. They've shown nothing to make us think that that's going to happen. So
exactly, I'm not assuming that.
So right now we're just going to say, hey, let's go ahead, let's get the brooms out, let's sweep Duke, let's take care of business, and let's move on. Because if we win all 3, if we sweep Duke and win 1 in the tournament, I'm going to feel pretty comfortable. I think we're going to make it in if that's the case. If we win 2 and 1 in the tournament, I am going to be sweating it out as I have been on many selection Sundays. You know, it's you sitting there waiting, hoping you see us pop up as a 3 seed somewhere to get us to postseason ball. So I'm really hoping not to have to go through that again.
If you're sitting at 49 in the RPI right now and you win 2 out of 3 against another top 50 RPI team, you got to think you at the very least going to hold steady, maybe move up a spot or 2. So, and if they go on and win a game in the tournament, I'd feel pretty comfortable about them getting in as a 3 seed somewhere too.
Yeah. All right. Good. Well, that is good to hear. So what we're going to do is, look. We're going to have to pull hard this weekend, Jason. It's going to be mostly on you. I hate to tell you that because I have plans Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. This is going to be the first weekend almost all year that I'm going to miss some of every game. I have been on top of this season. Man. I'm telling you, this is brutal. I hate it because I absolutely love watching Clemson baseball, even though it hasn't necessarily gone as well as I'd hoped this year. I've always got the games on. I'm, watching it with my girls and doing things at the same time. But I'm going to be gone a good bit this weekend, so I'm going to be counting on you to pull this through for sure. But look, it's time to hit the reset button. I say this a lot of weeks, especially when we have had a week that's not as good as we had hoped, maybe. So I'm hitting the reset button, and again, come this weekend against Duke, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. By the way, this weekend. I'm going to be the biggest Clemson baseball fan there is. So that's what we're going to do. Even though I'm watching from afar or listening or keeping up with on my phone or whatever it is, that's how we're going to do. So, look, before we get out of here, Jason, tell everybody, look, you have all kind of good content that you put out. Tell them how they can see your stuff. Tell them how they can follow you on social media.
Yeah, I'm over at allclemson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at JP_Priester SI. I pretty much cover baseball, Clemson baseball over there at the website. And I'm the recruiting analyst over there, so things are fixing to get real busy for me here in a few weeks. But I will be there at the ballpark this weekend covering the games, and I'm like you. Hopefully, the trend of them playing it well at home will continue, and at the very least, they can win the series. Maybe they can even sweep it, but I won't get greedy. Let's just say 2 out of 3.
That's right. I'm okay with that prediction. I'm okay with being a little bit conservative. All right, but we need to take care of business. Bottom line. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So get in there, watch your Tigers, listen to your Tigers, however you keep up with them. Pull for them hard because we need a big weekend from our Clemson Tigers out there on the baseball diamond. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you watching with us tonight as always, and we want to make sure that you join us next time as we recap and talk about the postseason. And we'll see you next time as we slide into home.